Well, with Star Trek's The Changeling, we get a plot that was repeated for a potential new follow-up series called Star Trek Phase 2, but ended up being the plot for the movie, the motion picture, yeah. With The Changeling, the Enterprise is looking to make contact with, I don't know, some science outpost or what have you. And they can't reach him, and then suddenly Spock says, I'm not detecting any life out here. And Kirk's like, what do you mean? There's 4 billion people out here. Not anymore. And they get attacked. And they're almost on the verge of being destroyed. None of their weapons work. The shields are breaking down. They can't fight back, and the enemy vessel appears to be extremely small. They managed to hit it with a photon torpedo, but doesn't even scratch it. And then Kirk, desperate, tries to make contact with it, announces his name and his mission and all that, and then everything comes to a screeching halt. Well, turns out that Kirk's name, he identifies himself as Captain Kirk, is very similar to the name of the device's inventor. Well, okay, long story short, the device or a robot, what have you, out in space was an old probe that was launched. They refer to as the early 2000s, and was lost in deep space. Now, of course, we did launch some probes into space, and at least one of them, I believe, has already left the solar system, so it's out there somewhere. But this was something they just made up, because it hadn't happened yet at the time this was being taped and all that. And they suggested this probe called Nomad was launched with a particular mission designed for it by a Dr. Roy Kirk, something like that. And so his name's very similar, but the probe suffered some damage, and they believed it was lost. Well, as a result of this, it came in contact with another probe, and the two of them repaired one another and formed one probe. And this went about changing their programming to then turn on all organic life and sterilize it. They saw it as an infestation. And so that's why it wiped out all these people in this star system that the Enterprise is flying into. And the only means by which they survived is, of course, the similarities between the name, and with the damaged memory banks of the device, it mistook Kirk for its creator. And so, so it follows Kirk around and all this stuff, and they're trying to figure it out. Nothing they can do, because it's so awesomely powerful that none of their weapons would stop it, even though several red shirts do try to shoot it, and they get disintegrated. And then what does Kirk do? He assigns 2 more. They get disintegrated too. Oh boy. And then at one point it overhears Uhura singing, so it goes to try to understand this, doesn't understand it, so it zaps her brain to drain all her knowledge, and leaves her in almost vegetative state. She's just standing there with a blank stare. And they say, well, we just got to re-educate her. And by the end of the show, they said, she'll be back to normal by the week's end. I don't think so. Now, they demonstrate this in a scene where Christine Chapel is helping her read like a first grader reader, and she's struggling through it. But then she goes back and starts speaking Swahili. So it's kind of the suggestion that maybe she didn't lose all of her memories after she was dazed or what have you, and that she kind of lost some of her abilities and had to relearn them, and that she went back to her native language rather than speaking in English, all that stuff. But it's still this was some sort of thing that would have taken her years to recover from. But well, we'll just move on from that, won't we? So the other thing, Spock manages to do the Vulcan mind meld with it. Now, he did this with a rock creature, so I guess it stands to reason, since the artificial life form, I guess here, or artificial intelligence, managed to achieve some amount of sentience, that Spock was able to communicate with it so that he could actually visualize what had happened. And so then he relates the story of what happened with this entity. that the alien entity was another probe that was sent out to gather data and all this sort of stuff. And now that due to their encounter with one another, it's corrupted the programming to where it's this dangerous, monstrous entity, you know. It actually kills Mr. Scott. And Kirk, oh no, because there's no doubt about it, because McCoy looks him over and he's dead, Jim. So that's that. Well, that's usually when McCoy says that, you're done. But turns out Nomad can resurrect the dead. So not the ones he disintegrated. No, they're just greasy stains on the floor now. But Mr. Scott was he was not disintegrated. So they bring him back. And it's too bad they had to get rid of him, because they could have kept him around, you know. He could be resurrecting dead people all over the place. But anyway, the whole point of this is that it is an interesting plot device. There's some stretches here and there that kind of falls apart. But eventually, what happens? Well, the same old, the logic battle that Kirk pulls out, his ace in the sleeve every time they run into any kind of computers or androids or whatnot. And once the Nomad realizes, and how it doesn't dawn on it from the get-go, that Kirk is also an organic entity, even though it notices all the other humans are, and Spock and everything, suddenly it realizes, oh, well, the Creator is imperfect. But then this creates the problem: if the Creator is imperfect, how can you be perfect? And so on and so forth. And at the last minute, it's battling with Kirk on this. And then Kirk says, I am your creator. And he says, yes, you are. And he says, you're wrong. You know, your creator was Roy Kirk. I'm Jim Kirk, you know. But I mean, well, that's so says you. I mean, the Nomad really doesn't have the proper data to remember exactly the creator or anything. But anyway, the point's made, and so then it's in this logic battle with itself. As a result, as logically by its programming, it now has to destroy itself. But it takes a little while deciding on doing that, so Kirk and Spock have time to grab it, take it to the transporter room, and beam it outside, where it explodes. And that's that. So now the plot for this is stolen top to bottom for the motion picture, in which the ultimate reveal at the end is that V'ger, the ginormous mechanical, artificial intelligence thing that's wiping out all kinds of starships and space stations and whatnot, and headed for Earth to do just that to it. They learned that it was once a Voyager probe, and now it got damaged and encountered some sort of artificial life form of mechanical machines and whatnot, and was rebuilt to be this new entity and continue on its mission. And it's seeking out its creator, which of course is human beings, and it doesn't understand this, and blah blah blah. But you see, it's the same story. Of course, it was supposed to be the pilot for Star Trek Phase 2, but that was canceled and turned into a motion picture to compete with Star Wars. And the rest of the scripts for that first season ended up being Star Trek: The Next Generation. Decker and Ilyana or Yelena, I forget, the bald lady, that became Counselor Troy and Riker. So the same story, just rehashed like that. But anyway, but still, the plot was here and originally in Changeling, and I'm sure someone has mentioned it before, but when it comes up, it's never really discussed. I haven't heard of it, but it's obviously the same thing. Even though, when it becomes V'ger, it's more referential to actual events of the Voyager project and whatnot. But still, anyway, some amount of interest here. Some things were a bit much. I mean, like Uhura having to relearn within a week everything, so she's already back and ready to go for the next episode. So I mean, that's pretty good stuff. Now, another idea, and I think this is applied more to the motion picture and V'ger, possibly being that the artificial life forms were actually the Borg. You guess theoretically you could say this was too, and that this was the first encounters with this. Although, you know, Enterprise kind of screws with that and all that stuff. And it seemed to be suggested in the new, you know, Discovery, but they never really got there. But whatever, it doesn't matter. And maybe they're headed towards that because of the Picard series and all that. But who cares? But anyway, it's clearly stated that no, the Nomad encountered just another probe. And the clash between the two created this new Nomad entity. And that the probe in and of itself was probably set by some other just alien species. However, I suppose you could say that was the Borg doing that, but I don't know why they would bother. I mean, unless they were seeking out people to take over or something like that, but it doesn't really stipulate that. And Spock actually speaks an alien name for it. I can't even remember what it is now. Tongue something. So, yeah, I mean, I guess you could stretch it to mean that or what have you. But at this point, it's so badly damaged by current Star Trek that I guess it just doesn't really matter. So there you go. The Changeling. Thank you for watching and listening. Say, why not like and subscribe and check out that link description below. That'll take you to my mini stores that have plenty of goodies for you. Yes, that's right, you. Most notably, my comic book Night Night over at indieplanet.com. You can also catch my podcast, Mr Nailsin Show, on radiomisfits.com. And you can also watch my videos over at BitChute.